Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for yet another episode here of Knight Brothers Commentary. Coming to you today to talk again about one of our favorite topics, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think the last time that we were talking about the MCU, Matt, it was a Black Widow episode. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Okay, I think it was Black Widow. We were kind of recapping that, what I thought was a pretty great film. Since that time, Matt and I have played some major catch-up. There's been a lot of new content that has hit the proverbial airwaves, and we're going to cover a lot of ground here in tonight's episode. So we've got Shang-Chi,
Yep.
We've got the Eternals,
Yep.
And we've got Spider-Man, you know, the third episode in the trilogy, although it may continue on. You know, it seems like there certainly is going to be more, so I don't want to call it a trilogy, but and I'm forgetting, this one was No Way Home, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It's all the different home ones, but Spider-Man No Way Home. So got a lot of ground to cover. Matt, I'm going to hand it over to you to kick us off.
All right, so starting off with Shang-Chi. My thoughts on this movie are actually, I actually hold this one in pretty high regard, actually. It's definitely one of the better films in Phase 4 so far. And essentially, I mean, the bare bones of the plot is basically Shang-Chi is the son of the Mandarin, essentially, who is basically the leader of a terrorist organization called the Ten Rings. His dad's lived for like thousands of years.
Yep.
But essentially, his dad kind of quits being a mob boss to have like a normal life.
Yep.
And then Shang-Chi's mother dies. He kind of I guess,
reverts.
Reverts essentially. But
And this is not the Mandarin, not to be confused with the Mandarin from Iron Man 3, which
he actually is in this movie too, and I loved Ben Kingsley.
Yeah,
I hated his performance in Iron Man 3, but I love it in this movie.
Yeah, I think he accepted that. He accepted the role really well and just played a lot of comedic relief in this particular, version of that Mandarin. But no, he was an imposter. He was a fraud of the Mandarin, and was sort of being used as a distraction from what was really going on in that, in the plot of Iron Man 3. But very funny in this movie, and we do get a deeper understanding of the true Mandarin. And the origin of the Ten Rings and the entire sort of civilization conquering story that's gone on for generations due to the strength of the Ten Rings and the sort of everlasting life that it's provided Shang-Chi's father.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Matt, as we get back to kind of the plot of the movie, as his father sort of reverted back, we started sort of peeling back the onion and getting introduced to his sister, who there was obviously some tension in that relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And then, sort of the movie came to a culmination where, Shang-Chi was forced to face his father in an effort to do what he felt was, ultimately right in protecting his mother's,
native homeland.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought from storyline, origin story, the acting itself, I was really impressed. I thought it was one of the better origin, standalone individual superhero movies that the MCU has put out. I found it entertaining, funny, compelling, all the above.
Yeah, so kind of flipping the script in a way. Let's talk about Eternals.
Everything that Shang-Chi was, the Eternals was not. Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, so why don't you give a little plot overview there? And
so essentially the Eternals are basically I want to say like a group of humans who are created by this massive godlike beings called the Celestials, the same species as Ego, essentially, at least from what I remember, because he said he was a Celestial too. And basically, their whole role is to kind of facilitate the birth of a new Celestial by making sure the Earth's population gets to a certain size.
They use the energy of the populace
to force the birth.
Yep. And really, the entire film was about what this group of Eternals. It was sort of their, how do I say it? Process of sort of peeling back the curtain or the veil. The Eternals are not privy to the process that is playing out, right? I mean,
here's the thing: the leader Ajax was
Right, but Ajax sort of leaves us early on in the story.
Yeah.
And once the story sort of starts to get into the meat of the plot, it's really more about this group of Eternals. Once Ajax has died, which we find out later how that came to pass, it's really their individual but also collective coming of age of realizing what they are a part of and the process that they are prolonging by fulfilling the job that they think they have or that they have been given. And then a few in the group deciding that they wanted to put a stop to that process.
Yeah. Now, some still stay loyal to the Celestials.
Yep.
The Superman ripoff, Icarus.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. The way I see it.
I'm sorry, he's Rob Stark, but anyways.
Yeah. For me, he was kind of like a Hyperion Mark Milton. His personality was definitely more towards Hyperion, or at least that's kind of what I've just gotten based off my research.
Okay, I don't know who those people
Hyperion
are,
is essentially one of Marvel's many Superman ripoff characters.
Okay.
But Hyperion is the most popular one.
Okay, interesting. I did
not know.
Yeah, so
I don't know. I was just getting a lot of Hyperion vibes from him.
Interesting. What I will tell you about the movie, and obviously we try to give a little brief plot overview as we talk things through, but the reason that Matt and I think are in agreement here started off by saying we were a little underwhelmed with Eternals. I think the biggest challenge was there were just too many characters. There were too many what we saw as superheroes that they tried to provide some backstories on, but it ended up being way too surface level, spread out. It was just bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, the movie was literally just kind of like all over the place. It really does suffer the same kind of problems that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 3 and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man 2 suffer. Like it just had too many like important characters just to flesh out.
It really did. There wasn't enough time. You felt like you got a little bit of everything, but no substance on anything. Right?
That's actually a pretty good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like it was kind of like an appetizer course with no entree.
Yeah.
And so, we sat there for 2 hours and watched the film, and a lot of different things happened. And, I think cinematically it was still what you would come to expect. Big action from Marvel, acting was not poor. I didn't feel like anybody dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel
it didn't feel like it was like nothing really stood out. It was just kind of like a solid B film, really.
Yeah, no story resonated with me. I didn't feel connected to any of their characters by the end of it.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, when we did get to the end of it, there was some things that left me feeling intrigued.
Yeah.
Which was obviously, the fact that, and I'm going to forget her name. This shows you how much I didn't connect with the film.
Yeah.
The main gal.
Cersei?
Yeah, Cersei. She gets taken by a Celestial, essentially, at the end of the film. So there's that's kind of ... to be continued.
Yeah.
And then we get introduced introduced to what I think is the precursor for I'm going to forget the name of it with the knight.
Black Knight?
Black Knight. Yeah. And that's, and I forget whose voice we heard there.
It's Marshala Ali
from Blade, the future of Blade.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you sure you're ready for that, or whatever it is? Are you sure you want to do that?" I can't remember how he delivered the line, but it indicated to me that we're going to see more from Kit Harington, aka Jon Snow. Again, it's hard for me to disassociate him from that character. But what are you hearing, Matt, on the future of Black Knight and Blade and how that all gets tied into the story?
To be honest, I don't really know much about the future. I want to say that Black Knight will probably play some kind of role in the Blade movie. That's my best guess, just depending on how that end credit scene kind of played out.
Right.
But I do know a little bit of the backstory.
Okay.
Of the character, and essentially, Dane Whitman, who's the Kit Harington's character name, he's essentially the descendant of the first Black Knight, Sir Percy of Scandia.
Okay.
And the blade and the sword that he has is the bony blade. And it basically, it's actually kind of like the opposite of Mjolnir, where instead of trying to find people who are worthy of power, it actually seeks out people who are unworthy.
Oh, wow.
And it actually makes them tap into their worst impulses.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why Blade said what he said, because it's like you are going to be forced to actually tap into that.
Interesting.
And the way I see it, I think this is not necessarily true for the comics, but I think, at least for the MCU, the movies,
Yeah.
this blade is powered by Eldritch magic, which is the same thing that probably also powers the 10 rings.
Okay.
Just based off that credit scene from Shang-Chi and how they were talking about like how the rings are really ancient and really powerful and all that. But the person who created the blade in the comics is Merlin.
Okay.
And if you know like King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table.
Merlin's beard. Yeah.
Also had a nice little Harry Potter reference too. But
yeah.
Essentially, he was actually a Sorcerer Supreme, just like Doctor Strange was.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm thinking is he created the blade just like he did in the comics, but he uses the same kind of magic that Doctor Strange uses to do so. Because if you remember from Doctor Strange, they actually imbued like weapons with all different kinds of magic. So I'm thinking it's probably just going to be the same for the Bony Blade as well.
Interesting. I wouldn't have connected those dots, so that's pretty cool.
And this is just my personal theory as well, but I think Merlin was also the Ancient One's teacher and predecessor.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because they changed the origin story for the Ancient One for the MCU because of all the political stuff. But
did they really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but here in the MCU, she's a Celtic woman.
Yeah, well, I knew she was a woman, obviously, but
she's Celtic.
Okay.
So that's basically like pretty much Scottish. If I mean, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure pretty much most of the Celtic people were in Scotland.
Okay.
And she's lived a very long time because she's drawn power from Dormammu.
Yeah, that was sort of.
So my theory is that he was her teacher.
Interesting.
I mean, that's just my theory with regards to the MCU, but.
Well, we'll see if that gets hashed out. I do want to touch on one other thing.
Yeah.
Just to kind of put a bow on the Eternals. We did see another end credit scene where and a big point of clarification here on the Eternals is that the Eternals are not unique to Earth. Yeah. And there's multiple Celestials and multiple teams of Eternals. And, this sort of plays out, repeats itself throughout, the MCU and presumably the multiverse. Although I don't know if that's been clarified yet.
Yeah.
But we got Harry Styles as
Thanos' brother.
Yeah, which, and he, honestly, it was one of the best scenes in that movie.
Easily.
Yeah, I mean, just the tone changed from kind of a, this, I don't know, he just brought a different tone or vibe
it's almost like a happy-go-lucky kind of tone to it.
Yeah, and there was none of that from any of the characters really in the Eternals. And maybe that's where the movie was lacking a little bit, but it was, he brought this, it'll just be interesting. Obviously, they're going to continue this story, and it seemed like he was of the similar mindset as Cersei in terms of, breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
At least that's what I felt was alluded to in that scene, but we'll just have to wait and see. Presumably there'll be an Eternals 2, and,
Yeah, and just one more thing with the Eternals. I truly believe they're going to set up Galactus as not only one of the biggest villains in the MCU, but he's also going to be a Celestial.
Okay. Well, it certainly seems like they continue to redefine power in the MCU. It's like we kind of started, and it's interesting because I think back to like the first Avengers film that I saw, right?
Yeah.
Well, the first Avengers film, period. But, Loki was like this all-powerful with the Tesseract, and as the MCU has played out, it's like power keeps getting redefined.
Yeah.
It keeps getting bigger and bigger. Ronan going after the Power Stone. But then there's Thanos, who's kind of hovering over that in the background for a while. Yeah. We know he's there. Then he comes in, and it's like, okay, Thanos redefines power and the Infinity Stones and all that. Well, then everything gets blown to shit with, basically Loki's series and the TWA and the, this whole...
The TVA.
TVA, I'm sorry, TWA. That's an actual agency. Anyways, the TVA. And so, again, it gets redefined because you have the sacred timeline that now gets broken, and you see truly just how big things are. Yeah. Now the Eternals come into play, even more power, Celestials, etc. It's just because that's the point. And what made me think of this was you talk about this being Thanos' brother. Yeah. Thanos was, correct me if I'm wrong, he was an Eternal
Yes, he
essentially.
was. He was an Eternal.
Yeah, and we didn't.
And Titan is the homeworld of the Eternals.
Right. So it's like it's just the MCU keeps redefining things, and I think it's cool because it's remained compelling. None of it's come off as none of it has cheapened what we've already seen.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you can put a bow on Eternals.
Yeah.
And get to what I thought was the best MCU film I've seen in a long time.
Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Yeah.
Easily the best film in Phase 4 so far. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah. Right. Really, for me, rivaled Infinity War and Endgame in terms of how satisfying of a film it was. It wasn't the size and scale of those films, right? Because you're still talking about a single. Well, there was obviously a lot of character arcs, but really it's Spider-Man's story. It wasn't the whole Avengers umbrella story.
Yeah.
But as far as a film that paid a lot of tribute to the fans, paid a lot of tribute to the Spider-Man franchise as a whole and what that's been evolved to become, etc. I just found it to be a really well thought out film.
Oh, it really was. I'm like, I love the fact that they didn't really overuse both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in this film.
Yeah.
But here's something that I think you'll agree with me on this. But the way the pacing of the film kind of starts off is like, it feels like an interconnected Marvel movie, like all the other like individual films are. But as the film progresses, it kind of loses its MCU connectivity, if you will, and it kind of becomes its own thing. It kind of becomes its like.
Matt, I've never thought about it like that, but you're 100% right. And maybe that's why I loved it so much, because it had a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
that's
really
such
did.
a good assessment by you, because it starts off so quick, and we're getting reintroduced to MCU familiar faces. Yeah. Right. And it's Doctor Strange, and it's Wong, and it's,
and also with the Daredevil cameo.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot of it felt very MCU. Yeah. Right. You've got Happy in there. You've just got that whole vibe.
Yeah.
And then once it sort of recognized that it was an MCU film, it said, how can we pay homage to Spider-Man? And how can we, and that's where, for everything from, J. Jonah Jameson to, getting, Doc Ock and the Green Goblin and reintroducing, and they did it in a way that still, that was sort of like, because there was the Doctor Strange element, it still felt MCU. It was starting to transition to Spider-Man. And then once he had sort of brought everybody in and defied Doctor Strange, that's when it became a full-fledged Spider-Man film. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then and Ryan, our brother Ryan, his words for me was, it was a love story for Spider-Man, and it really was. Yeah. In the sense of the whole, MJ deal, but also a love story in a bigger picture sense of how it tied in all the themes and, arcs from the other stories. Yeah. It was great.
Now, here's the thing that I really love about this movie. The villains were really good. Yeah. I mean, Willem Dafoe nailed it as the Green Goblin. Yeah. But the thing that I really like about it is that it doesn't feel, it's not jarring. It literally just feels like a continuation of his character arc, even though he died in the first movie. Right. Because in the first movie, it feels like both personas, Norman and the Green Goblin, both have a hand on the wheel, and they're both trying to control it. But to basically kind of quote Bruce Banner from Thor Ragnarok, Norman was basically locked in the trunk. Yeah. And Green Goblin was in full control in this movie. Yep. Like, it really feels that way.
It does.
Because you can see the fear in Norman's eyes, like when he first transfers over to this universe. He's like, what's going on? Yeah. What's happening? Like, where am I?
And he quickly realized he had no control. Yeah. And it was also, I mean, everybody, I think it's really cool when you get to see your villains humanized to an element. You see Doc Ock really become a totally different person, because he was the first one to get the I'll say antidote or whatever.
Yeah, the cure essentially.
Yeah, the cure for his ailment.
And I agree with you, but
Yeah.
actually, I take that back. The way I see it, it's not necessarily that I never really see Doc Ock as evil.
Yeah.
Because if you remember from the second Spider-Man movie, the second Tobey Maguire movie, that the control chip that allows his normal brain to influence the other brains and robotic
Tentacles,
arms,
yeah.
and the tentacles essentially gets destroyed. So essentially, the overwhelming collective hive mind, if you will, from the tentacles basically overwhelms him.
Yeah.
And that's what really kind of pushes Doc Ock to become evil.
Well, but
once the cure happens, he now has full control again, and that's basically what you see kind of played out in that scene.
Well, but I think you used a buzzword that I think is all of the villains.
Yeah.
Right. Some by accident, some by intention.
Yeah.
It's that tease of power that takes them from being human to something more sinister.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what to me the story is about. It's what separates a superhero from a supervillain.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's
and it also ties back to basically Uncle Ben's catchphrase: "With great power comes great responsibility."
And that's exactly where I was going. And that's why when you said that word, it made me think of that. That is the essence of the Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
Is that it's a very fine line between superhero and supervillain. And if you let it go too far, i.e. a Norman Osborn, where he is just striving towards, if you go back and watch the original Spider-Man, it's that whole story of, well, the military comes in there and they're going to pull the contract and the funding if they don't get this right.
Yeah.
And Norman pushes too far.
Yeah.
Right.
And the same thing goes with Doc Ock. He's he's trying to make the world a better place with his sun technology, if you will.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's just a tragic accident and he loses control of the tentacles.
And that's that fine line of knowing how far is too far.
Yeah.
How far can you push it?
Yeah.
And that's where that really is what separates a lot of, and again, I don't want to make this too, theoretical or too whatever, but even Thanos, you think about Thanos, the story of Thanos is in his mind, he is doing this to benefit everybody. He thinks what he's doing by, you talk about, like, he talks about what he's doing and why, when he snaps that it's completely at random, right? And that, the people that live on are going to have this sense of, gratitude, and they're going to want, in his mind, he's acquiring all this power because he thinks it's a great idea, just like Norman Osborn did, just like Doc Ock did. But that is essentially the Achilles heel of all of our super villains, is that they don't see their own flaws.
Yeah.
They don't see their own vision being flawed.
Yeah.
And that plays out in real life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why these stories are so compelling.
Yeah.
And I just think, to bring it back to Spider-Man, this movie did a really good job of tying, to your point, that whole "with great power comes great responsibility," that whole underpinning of the franchise itself, because it really, that one line stands to define so much of what we see play out on screen.
Yeah.
And, it's what keeps everybody coming back.
Yeah.
Is, among a lot of other things, but I think people want to see great stories told.
Absolutely.
And we got a great story in Spider-Man.
Oh, it was a very good story. It really was.
Yeah. And I'll let you kind of, because I've been talking here for a little bit, talk us through the post-credit scenes, because we saw a lot there. And I think there's a lot of meat on that bone.
Oh, man.
Well, so first, we got the first end credit scene.
Yeah.
Which was the, which one was that?
I know. I'm having a hard time remembering.
I know what the last end credit scene was. The first end credit scene, how am I forgetting this? Because the last one was so good, which was the Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Basically a preview for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And we saw somebody that was basically a different version of Doctor Strange that I guess you've seen in What If.
I think it is the Doctor Strange from What If. I really do.
So give me the 30,000 foot view. What is that all about? Because I have not seen What If.
Yeah. Essentially, this Doctor Strange is basically a version where he actually didn't lose the use of his hands.
Okay.
But he was kind of in a will they want their relationship with Christine? And she's the one who dies. She dies in that car crash where in our main universe, Doctor Strange loses his hands.
Yes.
And so he basically just tries to undo it, and it just backfires catastrophically, really.
Well, it was a very interesting look. That look that he gave. Yeah. I forget the line that he delivered in the preview, but it certainly sets up for what looks to be a wild ride in the next Doctor Strange film. Obviously, bringing in
Wanda Maximoff as Scarlet Witch.
Yeah,
and I think Loki is probably going to make an appearance at some point because I've heard a lot of stuff about that.
Yeah,
and I don't know if Shang-Chi is going to make an appearance. I don't think that Shang-Chi should. I mean,
okay. Do you think Shang-Chi is going to be one of the Avengers in the next Avengers film?
I do believe so, yes.
Okay, I do too. When we originally talked about this, after we saw it, I'm not sure you were so certain, but
I mean, I've had a lot of time to kind of reflect, and I do think that Shang-Chi will be in the next Avengers movie. To me, there's no doubt of that now.
Okay. Well, I hope he is because I thought he was really good, and to me, it would be a miss to not
capitalize on that.
Capitalize on him. Now I remember the second. Yeah. I just remember the second post-credit scene. It was Tom Hardy sitting at the bar.
Right. It was Tom Hardy. You're right.
Yeah, it was Tom Hardy.
And basically, the symbiote gets left behind.
Correct. In what appears to be, it appears that Tom Hardy was taken somewhere when the whole multiverse spell that Doctor Strange originally cast was going on. Yeah. So now it's really, to me, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, this is setting up some sort of Spider-Verse plot line, bringing together.
I think you're right. I think there will be the Spider-Verse line because you not only have like what's going on with Venom, but also with Tom Holland Spider-Man and possibly, and with Morbius as well. Now, if there is going to be a next Venom or Spider-Man movie, and I think personally I would probably do like a team-up movie. With
I was just going to say a crossover.
A crossover movie with Tom Holland Spider-Man and
Tom Hardy's Venom.
Yeah. I would love that. I would love to see Tom Holland rock the symbiote suit.
Yeah.
Because, Tobey Maguire, I don't know about it. It's easily the weakest Spider-Man movie for me.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
He just didn't fit that. He didn't have that personality to him.
Yeah, but you saw with how Tom Holland fought the Green Goblin, he really let loose.
Yeah. We saw.
And I feel like, because the thing about the symbiote is it really kind of brings out your darkest demons.
Kind of like we were talking about with the Black Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just love to see that happen with Tom Holland. I would just love to see him just let loose. Because, you really don't.
We haven't gotten a lot. Yeah, we haven't got a lot.
We got a tease of it with that fight.
Yeah.
But I would love to see more of it.
Yeah. We know we've established who Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
We've seen enough of him on screen through now 3 films.
Yeah.
A variety of appearances.
Well, actually, it's more than 3 films.
I was going to say a variety of appearances in other MCU films. Yeah. We've established that baseline.
Yeah.
And I do think it would be curious to see how he portrays, the symbiote suit and that.
Now, here's the thing. He may not wear the symbiote suit at all. Another thing is it may actually be Matt Gargan wearing the symbiote suit because Matt Gargan is also another version of Venom. There's 3 main versions of Venom.
Okay.
Eddie Brock, which is basically the one that was in Spider-Man 3, and Tom Hardy.
Yep.
Matt Gargan, who's originally the Scorpion, but later drops that persona and becomes a weaker version of Venom.
Yep.
And I won't go into the comics as to the reason why he's weaker than Eddie, but it basically just kind of boils down to anger.
Okay.
And then there's also the Flash Thompson Venom, Agent Venom.
Yep.
Where the symbiote is really kind of more controlled, if you will, as opposed to it kind of
being in control.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good stuff to come. We've got a lot of content coming up.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be exciting. Well, we will be back, hopefully, in a couple of weeks here with some more content, maybe do something. We're getting ready for NFL playoff time. Yep. We've got some, obviously we can always tap into the world of politics or some of Matt's military stuff if we want to do that. But for now, Night Brothers Commentary signing off.